And welcome everyone to the Shitlord Preachers podcast. This is episode 46. Thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Amos Joseph, joined by my friend here, Brook Potter, who is in the UK. For those of you joining us for the first time, the Shitlord Preachers podcast is basically where my friend Brook Potter and I, who are both former preachers, now reformed shitlords, basically get together on this podcast. We talk about anything from social, cultural, political issues, and pretty much anything in between. But how's it going today, Brook?
It's going well, Amos. What are we on, number 46? So we're
46.
We're getting up there, man. We're pretty soon we're going to have like our 52nd, and that would be a full year's worth of content. So we got to do something special for that. I'm doing well. I'm in the office. We just had a police raid just down the road from where I'm at, like literally in the block next to me. Helicopters, SWAT team, armed response.
Oh man. Who dropped a butter knife?
I don't know. Somebody like, obviously they didn't color inside the lines or something. It's very serious stuff. Yeah. Very serious stuff. Those plastic scissors, they're a threat. But I mean, I literally heard all the shouting and I stepped outside for a few minutes and, well, yeah, it's pretty clear at this point. So yes, a lot of action this side of the pond. Amos, back to you.
Well, nothing much is going on here. I am, of course, as I've told you, for my job that involves traveling, I have been home for the last 3 weeks, just about.
What?
Exactly. I've gotten a lot of writing done, which is nice. If anyone wants to check that out, on think-liberty.com or beinglibertarian.com, I write news articles for Being Libertarian, and I write more topical pieces for Think Liberty, which is going to be in a book soon.
Excellent. So you're going to be an author?
I will be a contributor to a book.
A contributing author?
Exactly.
It's all public relations, man,
Exactly. I'm still debating, and I'll probably have to talk to you about this. I'm debating if I want to use my real name.
Good question.
Yeah, do I want to use my real? Because some people know what my real name is. My name is Amos Joseph, but that's only part of my name. But I'm
Frank.
Exactly. I've debated if I wanted to, include my last name because, different things. So, excuse me. So, yeah, there's that. So I wrote up I have a series. I've had my piece that I've done on the Chinese night market, and then I did a 3-part series talking about Tiananmen Square, Tibet, and Taiwan. The Taiwan piece is coming out sometime this week. So that was the one I put a lot of. Well, Tiananmen Square, I put a lot into. Tibet was a little bit tricky because there's.
It's a little unclear. There's not good information about what happened.
Yeah, it's complicated too with the Dalai Lama involved, and then Taiwan, I just kind of went for it, like really. Plus, I know I put in a lot of personal stories in there too. So, anyways, other than that, I was also. Yeah, we might as well talk about this real quick. I went on a little vacation. I guess I call it a vacation. It's considered a vacation, but
more like a city break, right?
Yeah, I get away from where I am. I mean, I'm away from the cities, and I drive through the cities to go to northern Minnesota, only to go to another town. Now, there's this nice place, and I'll show everyone here.
Well, show everyone except those in the podcast because they can't see.
Oh, yeah. Whoops. 1 sec here. For everyone who is listening in the podcast, definitely check out the stream where you'll be able to see this. But this is a little place called the Wilderness Lodge. It's in northern Minnesota. Definitely check them out if you're looking to book somewhere to stay. They have cabins and stuff. This is the main lodge where the owner lives, and I basically go see her a handful of times a year and hang. She's got like multiple rooms, and stay in one of the rooms and just hang out there. It's Brooke's been there. A lot of our friends have been there. It's probably one of the most relaxing places I've been. Wouldn't you agree, Brooke?
Yeah, I was about to say I've been there maybe 3 times, maybe I think it's 3 times.
Yep.
We've done a couple conferences out there, and it is definitely one of the most peaceful, restful places that I've ever been to. Yeah, I don't know what it is about the atmosphere. It's right on the lake, and it's ridiculously peaceful. And even though yes, it's northern Minnesota, which snow, ice, cold, it's always been an enjoyable time. And the host and her husband are phenomenal people. So we definitely recommend anybody who's looking for that kind of place. They want to get away in the summer to do some fishing, and they don't really do hunting out there, but a lot of fishing and that kind of stuff. Great. If you want to do snowmobiling in the winter when the lake is frozen over, also a very good location for that. I think they've got some of that going on as well. So definitely look into the Wilderness Lodge if anybody's into that.
Yeah, I think I remember when we checked last, I think like TripAdvisor rated them pretty well. I don't think, I mean, even like some like, I've talked to them, they've rarely really had even the slightest bit of anything. I mean, any place you're going to come across, people, oh, what about this? What about that? But the people that run the place keep that place in tip-top shape. It's the cabins are beautiful inside. They're very comfortable. And like you said, the atmosphere it's I'll just say for lack of a better term, it's ridiculous how relaxing it is when you're out there. I've talked about this with Brooke. Like sometimes I'll go out there and I don't even I'm coming just from a normal day. I'm not like, I haven't had any long week. I just go there. And next thing you know, I'm like falling asleep, just sitting there doing whatever, and I'm taking way too many naps. But I don't feel like I'm oversleeping or anything. It's like my body is just relaxed no matter what I'm doing there. It's just, yeah.
It is
something about the atmosphere there. But yeah, it's a really nice place to check out. It's nice because I get to go there pretty much free.
But yes, anybody who's interested, please patronize them. And the husband to the proprietor, he's a phenomenal cook as well. He does really good food. He's a European gentleman.
I don't know if he cooks for guests though.
Right. But if this is what I was going to say, you might be really lucky. If you're really, really nice, you might be able to sample some of his food. So I'll just put that out there. Food is not included, but you might get lucky. So just want to say
that. But yeah, so I was there from Wednesday till yesterday, and then yesterday noon about I made my way back. It's a 5-hour drive for me.
Right.
So I usually, I used to do that a lot more. I just take a weekend, go there for a day or two, but sometimes I go a little longer. I think the longest I've been there is probably like 3-4 days.
I think I spent nearly a month out there once.
Yeah, it's and you stayed in one of the rooms, right? You didn't stay in any of the cabins?
No, I didn't stay in the cabin. I stayed in the main lodge, one of the guest rooms. Was it the Looney Bin or some? I can't remember what there was a name for it.
With just the cabin right next to the lodge?
No. There was a name for the room because it had like a bunch of bunks, not bunks, but like multiple people could sleep in the room.
Oh, the first one up the stairs?
Yeah. As you go up the stairs.
That's just number one.
Oh, it's just okay.
It just has numbers. Yeah, I always stay on the first one on at the top of the stairs. So that's the one
at the very top. Okay.
Yeah, the first one on your left, right across from the bathroom. So, anyways, yeah, it's an old lodge that's been it's like that whole property, that lodge used to be called something else, but it's like over 100 years old. So she's got some like pictures inside the lodge, kind of showing the history of the place, what it used to look like, what it looks like now, all the cabins that have been added on. Yeah, they've got cabins for large groups, couples, or they even have one like hunters will use like a one-man cabin. A lot of interesting stuff there. So
I heard rumored that you got some pussy while you're out there.
Oh God. Yeah, because I almost got married out there.
Oh my God, that's a whole other story.
They also do weddings, everyone. Nowadays, more than ever.
Did you see the new barn? Because
yeah,
Tell me a little bit about that.
So yeah, well, it's not just Wilderness Lodge; it's Wilderness Lodge, and Wedding Barn.
Right.
So she has the main lodge. She's got, I think, like 5 or 6 cabins, probably more.
5. Sometimes she could get a 6th with the arrangement she's got. Yeah.
Right, and then she's got the chapel. The chapel that she does the weddings for, and then you basically drive probably a couple miles out. So she's like at the end of a long like dirt road. And if you drive back out to the highway and you cross over to the other side of the highway, you get to the barn, which is where she's gonna start holding receptions.
So it's not on the property itself, it's somewhere else.
It's well within, it's the closest thing versus all the other reception options.
Interesting. Okay. I did not know that.
Because for the longest time, she always directed them to the next town over, Marcel,
yeah.
They had a community center that she always directed it there for like receptions and such. Now she owns the barn. Now she can basically, everything can be there. Right. The wedding, so the guests can stay at the resort.
Yes.
They go to the wedding. They drive a little bit over to the barn and have the reception there.
That's awesome.
That's really good. It's a barn with, where you can set up catering and food on the inside, and on the outside there's like a little, like, it looks like a hut, but it's like this it's basically like a little bartending thing. So she'll have that set up too. She was talking about like how she's, not to talk too much, but she basically was when she was there kind of bouncing some ideas about how she's going to move forward with booking that and setting up large groups of people. And it's real crazy how many licenses you need.
Oh, tell me about it. I mean, licensing is, the devil's plaything as far as I'm concerned. It's the devil's dildo kind of thing,
It's one of the libertarians' biggest talking points is stupid licensing for just, you need a license to do this, you need a license to do that. On my own property? Yep, you need a license for that too.
Jeez, it's ridiculous.
Anyways. So yeah.
Glad you had a good time, yeah.
Really nice place out there. But yeah, definitely anyone who's listening who wants to come to Minnesota, definitely either could hit me up on Twitter or just go straight to talking to Sue. Sue, which is Sue Beach. She's the, sorry, that's not even her name. Palovich. That's right. Yeah. It's like Sue Palovich. She's the owner of the place. Give her a call. Let her know that I sent you. I don't know if I'll get anything out of that, but we'll see. If we can direct her any business, that'd be awesome. So, yeah. But there's that. But I wanted to get into this article. I had a few conversations with some people about this, and it went all over the place. So, we haven't really done this in a while, like talking about articles. Let's see here. Washington Examiner is basically said, nearly 1 in 3 American men aged 18 to 29 didn't have sex in 2018.
Right.
So it says here, percentage of young adults who said they did not have sex in the last year hit an all-time high in 2018. So a high amount of people not. So, okay. The share of Americans age 18 to 29 who said they had no sex last year doubled between 2008 and 2018 to 23%. So they basically, they go into like trying to figure out like why.
Right.
Like, let's see, lack of sex is mainly by young men. The last decade, sure, let's see, young women have seen an increase since 2008 of 8 percentage points, so it's not as much. But then it doesn't say like to what though. See?
Right.
Which I find a little suspect. Let's see. Gene Twin, psychology professor, said that partnering up later in life is contributing to sexlessness. So people are waiting longer. There are more people in their 20s who don't have a live-in partner. So under these circumstances, I think less sex is going to happen. Participation in the labor force has also declined among young men. Young men are more likely to live with their parents than young women. Really?
You don't say.
So, do you think? Thanks, Washington Examiner. Like I needed to talk about that today. Anyways,
for those listening, it says, "Do you think President Trump will pardon Paul Manafort?"
Yeah, this is advertised on the website, and then for the when you're living at home, it's probably harder to bring sexual partners into your bedroom. Yeah.
No.
She also cited technology, huh? Well,
you just have to be creative.
Well, see, adding the creative aspect, it deters most people. So
I suppose
she also
cited, it's a lot difficult in the US with this one door. Anyway, that's a whole other story. Go ahead.
She also cited technology as a factor. There are a lot more things to do at 10 o'clock at night now than there were 20 years ago. Streaming video, social media, console games, everything else. So basically, people are more consumed with
porn.
Well, yeah, porn, Netflix, social media, everything else. But we do have other factors that are, yeah.
So hold on. Let's look at this for a second, right? So this is the Washington Examiner. What was it? 18 to 29 are
yes.
not having no sex. Do you fall in that demographic, Amos?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay, just checking. Do you agree with this article in any kind of capacity?
The factors that they've addressed definitely apply.
Okay.
But I think there are larger factors that they don't really consider. As as Brook and I talk about red pill materials and such and content, men don't want to get married. They don't want to get involved with women as much.
Right. That's not the same thing as men not wanting to have sex, though. So
yeah, but here's where it gets to though. Here's why they don't want to get involved with women, which could lead to sex. I mean, men want to have sex. There is no doubt about that. We are driven, but when you have just pop culture and just your day-to-day news, when you're hearing about Me Too, just rampant Me Too, like I'm not talking, there's definitely there's always going to be like the legitimate victims of rape coming out, and then they kind of, part of that Me Too group. But there have been plenty of cases of basically men are seeing celebrities getting taken down falsely accused and such. For example, I was really curious about this, and I haven't looked into it any further, but there was there was a voice actor who was involved. So Brooke knows that I watch like anime and stuff, and there was this movie that came out this just late last year. Everyone who knows about the Dragon Ball anime series, like it's really popular. It's become pretty big in the US. Well, they had their recent movie come out, and one of the main characters in the movie, the voice actor. So what happened is basically, Japanese movies come to the US. You have your American voiceover actors. And a lot of people know about the typical crew that does for Dragon Ball, like a lot of the characters and such. Anyways, so this voice actor, who was one of the main characters, like he was a new character brought into the series, and so the movie did very, very well in the US. And about within a couple weeks of the movie basically blowing up in the US, allegations of sexual harassments are coming out about this guy, which I don't get. I mean, I don't know, again, I don't want to sound too conspiracy theory or whatever. It's just, it's like so many times I've seen this where either it's a comedian or it's an actor or some person who basically gains some level of stardom when they see a sort of a rise in stardom. Basically, and if in real life, if they are not the most, if you want to say alpha or masculine, like if they have any shred of just, a little more passive in their real, what is it? Just how they carry themselves, basically. It's like they get taken advantage of, they get pulled in, they get, the allegations just blow up. And this guy basically had to start going to like anime conventions and such and start apologizing because the allegations came out. And then the the company that hired him ended up firing him.
Really?
All of his coworkers, like, so the other voice actors that voice the other like major characters in the show, one of them, so actually the voice actor who played the main character, like the central character of the entire show, the series, basically just came down hard, like saying like, kind of a throw him under the bus thing. And I just, like I said, granted, I'm not totally well versed in it, but it was like just another thing, another guy conveniently gets exposed for. Basically the allegations was like at conventions and meetups that he did, he was like hugging younger fans somewhat inappropriately. We
got a question. Is the guy named Vic? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So,
is that? We have people in the chat.
Well, we got a gentleman here. So yeah, maybe I just assumed the gender, but the human question asked about Vic. So
for the viewer that's asking about it, I've read about it, and it just rubs me the wrong way because it just seems all too convenient. Like, hey, here's a guy that just got popular off one of the basically one of the biggest movies this franchise has ever come up with. And, at a pivotal time when anime is just blowing up in the US, and here we are,
I mean, to add to that, I mean, I don't know if you've been following the situation with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard.
That is just completely like, go
ahead.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the fact that they actually have proof now that he was like
abused,
very, very badly abused. Something about his like finger getting fucked up or something with like the ring.
So Amber Heard, I guess most notably in Aquaman, she played Mira, the Aqua Queen or whatever, the princess, whatever. So for those who didn't know, she was married to Johnny Depp for a couple of years, and this all started because Johnny Depp was accused of some Me Too nonsense, and I think he lost the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise as a result of it. But nonetheless, it turns out that he was in fact the one being abused by this Amber Heard, and as you say, there's evidence. There's I think some X-rays where she smashed his hand to the point where his finger was literally like hanging by a couple sinew, and they had to take him into the hospital to reattach it and all this other stuff. And she's confirmed for Aquaman too, right? So Johnny Depp's been vindicated, lost Pirates of the Caribbean, but because of my vagina, it's a pass. And we're seeing the same thing with the Cardi B situation. Have you seen that, Amos?
Oh, have you seen the memes about comparing her to Cosby?
Which is exactly what I was going to get into, right? And the speculation on that is that she was a stripper, and she is admitted openly to drugging and robbing her clients as a stripper
because she had no other option.
Right.
No, limited options. That's what she said.
As if a stripper doesn't make money, right? I mean, strippers make more money than most of us combined. But yeah, she had no other option than to drug and rob her clients. And for some reason, the Council of Vaginas are rushing to her defense. It's like, oh, poor woman, woman of color. This is just how they are. They can't help themselves. It's a bad, mean world out there. And at the same time, you got people, as you say, like Bill Cosby, which did some detestable things. He's in prison as far as to the best that I know, right? He's in jail, isn't he?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's more so how the court of public opinion is treating it. Like the court of the legal courts definitely, yeah, they dealt with him the way that definitely should be dealt with, I think. It's just the court of public opinion has a huge double standard, and the fact that there is that double standard tells you a lot about how society perceives men and women. Correct. And why. And I think it is definitely a very real factor that contributes to, as our article is showing, why men aren't having sex. I think, like we've heard about, I talked about this with people. What is it? The big push now with just in policy just is always birth control, abortion, and all this for women. Sort of the reproductive rights, reproductive freedom, stuff like that. Whereas, if anyone's looked back in the NBA when they put out I think it was a memo. I don't know when, but I've heard this actually happened. The NBA put out a memo to all their players to basically, if they're ever in a situation where they're, they got groupies and fans that they obviously sleep with while they're on the road, take off the condom and flush it down the toilet.
Yeah, never entrust it to somebody else to dispose of, in other words.
Right. And I've actually seen stories of people basically sharing about how they've like come out of a bathroom or something and they see like the woman they're with is like trying to put the condom inside of her to like inseminate herself.
Yeah.
And it's yeah, and you wonder. I mean, it's like and of course the horde of not all women are like that are going to come out like this, and I could say, yeah, of course, not all women are like that. But here's the problem with that: when that becomes the front page news, when that becomes the front page of the internet, and millions upon millions of men read that, why do you think problems happen? Why do you think men don't want to have sex with women? They don't want to get involved with women. They don't want to get married. They take every precaution to not have a kid. Why do you have, I mean, the reality, this is where my conversation went on Twitter when I saw this article was, you're going to always have the natural balance of men who get laid and men who don't. Correct. That's just fact. When you start to push that balance out of whack, where you have even more men not getting laid than what we socially what has been kind of the balance for a while. In the world we're in, you get way too many men not having sex. And the response I got was, well, it's not women's job to fuck beta men. I said, well, of course not. But don't freak out if in the next couple decades beta men, incels start growing in number and no one knows why.
I mean, it's a very telling thing about this. I don't know if you saw the article I put out on my Brook Potter fan page about the court in Arizona. Basically, the court ruled that a woman wanted to use her ex-husband's saved sperm to impregnate herself.
Mm-hmm.
And the court basically ruled her desire to be a mother outweighed the husband's desire not to be a father. So the court is basically saying she can use the frozen sperm that he had in whatever sperm bank to impregnate herself and basically put him on the hook for 18 years of child support, even though he says he doesn't want to be a father. That's the law. And to go to your point, now I don't necessarily think that the Me Too movement and definitely the overreach of feminism is, while it is large, I don't think that's necessarily the biggest reason why young men are not having sex. So I perused the article and they definitely make some good points, but it goes back to a lot of what we discuss in the Red Pill about hypergamy and what it is that women are looking for. And it does say that men over 30 are having more sex, and for good reason. And I surmise it that these people tend to be a little more put together. They tend to be a little more, they've got a career, they've got income, they kind of got their shit sorted out a little bit. And this, I think, again, kind of plays into the distinction of the hypergamy, that women, of course, men in their 20s are still trying to kind of find their footing, and some of them have checked out of society in total, right? We agreed. They got the MGTOWs, we got the incels, we got the MGTOW monks. So some have definitely done that. The other problem, of course, is we live in the Tinder society where it's basically all down to looks, right? So women, used to hear women talk about men's personalities. That's gone, right? It's all about how they look, how tall they
are. Women, women like that are in the quite the minority, and we've talked about that too. How modern day sort of the landscape of dating is not only bad for men, but it's also bad for women, because the quote unquote good girls, the ones who do want to like find the right guy, who want to save themselves at least a little bit for marriage, are pressured into this, empowered lifestyle of, well, if the men get to sleep around, we get to sleep around even more. It's like, whoa,
Yeah, but even the good girls are now competing with. So the whole thing is skewed, right? We've got the 80% of women fighting for basically the top 20% of men, right? And that is a result of, yes, feminism, hypergamy gone mad. Technology has played into that because now women have access, to the whole world. Everybody's on social media. So it's definitely skewed. And women, because of feminism and hypergamy and all these other things, have a very much empowered sense of entitlement. And as I've said in a couple of videos, they want pretty much nothing less than Thor, right? They want an Asgardian god as their boyfriend, and they're not going to settle because standards, right? Now, before, in the times of, in the olden days, my days, in the age before, right? You kind of met your wife or whatever in your social circles in your kind of immediate vicinity, right? And it was the cute girl in the village, and she'd get all the attention, whatever. But everybody kind of paired off and married off or whatever in university and whatever. So now that's all gone. As you say, sexual liberation, all these other things. Women tend to be more promiscuous. So you get even the good girls who are competing for that same 20% of men are pretty much ignored by men when they try to be good, because, okay, you're not giving up the goods, but, I've got 3 other girls on the side who are giving up the goods.
And the male imperative favors that. I mean,
correct.
You have a society now where sexual liberation is happening on both fronts, really.
Correct.
And it's not necessary. I mean, it's, understand, every man who is alive today in the world is a result of every man before him successfully giving birth, getting a mate and having a child.
I should hope men aren't giving birth there, Amos.
Sorry, you get what I'm saying.
Yes.
And every man before us had to demonstrate some level of alpha. And think about this even further. There are more men in our lineage that were alpha males fucking upwards of 10 to 20 women in the tribe than there are men who were monogamous. In terms of human history.
I don't know if that's necessarily true, but we'll go
but monogamy is a relatively new thing in human history, though.
Sure, that I agree with. Yeah.
So I'm more so just pointing at the fact that the alpha male that slept with that had multiple women.
Yes.
And way back, there's more of them in our past than there are.
I got
Than there are of the monogamous men that we're used to in terms of history.
Right. Correct. I get what you're saying.
So it shouldn't be too far of a stretch to say that we have more of that wired into us, that thinking, that drive, that what is it? Rollo calls it that biological firmware.
Yes.
That is built into us. So it is obviously it is, of course, yeah, that's why men see, being, a player as a thing, because it's like that's successfully fulfilling your imperative as a man.
Correct.
And that's all. And now that sexual liberation is happening on both fronts, where men are still trying to fulfill that, but women are fulfilling it in a different way.
Well, I mean, this is that women have abandoned, in some ways, their sexual strategy.
Yeah, it's basically using the image of like the scale. We had a lot of checks and balances in society to kind of keep men and women's imperatives in check. Correct. Men and women were both put to a standard of you marry the one person, you have a bunch of kids. That's that.
Correct. From society, from religion, from other social, norms and other things.
Depending upon the country, sometimes the laws.
Yeah, good point.
But these things kind of kept both imperatives in check. No one got a little too crazy. Sexual liberation was pretty much in check. Now, is that saying, oh, you saying, women should wear chastity belts? No.
No, we're saying women should stay in the kitchen. No, I'm just kidding.
Again, every time you got to basically preface what we're saying is this is just the objective argument. I'm not saying morally. Like morally, yeah, I would absolutely love to just meet a girl who's meets a lot of great criteria, get married, have a bunch of kids, and not have to worry about a thing. But the world we're in doesn't allow for that. And anyway, so you have the scale, and now that the scale is being tipped in one way, you're going to have you start having some problems. So what happens? There tends to be a backlash. So people try to tip it the other way. And you keep trying to tip left and right until the whole scale breaks and people start getting hurt. Like I've told people this, it's like, I don't espouse any of the red pill MGTOWs and incels all read a lot of the same materials, read the same, material stuff that basically says, hey, shit's kind of sucks for dating, relationships, marriage, especially for men. But if you just get more and more men, but we interpret it differently. We look at it differently. Some guys check out, some guys hate women, and some guys decide might as well keep going, might as well be successful with women. Actually still try to get married. I still want to get married and have kids.
Yeah, I think this is what the study is pointing out. It's shit for men until they reach the age of 30.
And that is a good point too. Yeah.
Yeah. Then, and as we've discussed, we have the epiphany stage in women where they suddenly realize, they can no longer compete even with their younger self. And you hear this all the time, like, the woman in her 28, 29, and then suddenly all the good men and all the attention that she used to get dries up. And it's like, where have all the good men gone? Right. And you start seeing shit in their dating profiles. Like, I'm looking for a serious relationship, whatever the fuck that is.
A real man.
Well, they start dictating like a real man would accept me and my 9 kids from 5 different men and my lesbian lover. Like, you start seeing this desperation start to kick in, or at least an awareness that there's an issue around that time of hitting 30. But by the time a man hits 30, normally his shit's together, mostly, not necessarily all the way, but he's on a pretty good track. and his value in the sexual marketplace starts to increase, and he starts suddenly getting attention from the 18 to 24-year-olds who are, actually putting it out for these guys, right?
I mean, it's still not the most favorable. Like, I think we're looking at our chat here. It says, the risks outweigh the benefits. Yeah, there's still a lot of risks. I mean,
in terms of getting married, I think there's definitely more risks. And if you're a man of means, like you're famous, you've got money, the risk is exponentially greater. So there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, anyways, yeah, this is where I started getting into, like, the entitlement attitude that I was seeing across this conversation on Twitter was a lot of women basically not acknowledging, like, yeah, this is perfectly fine. Yeah, this is just a shift in culture, and this is totally fine. Like, don't have to worry about it. Like, so what if a bunch of guys just start not having sex? And again, I'm still not saying just, you got to start having sex with all the losers in society. But the standard of what is considered undesirable is being more and more raised to where fewer and fewer men start to meet that. I mean, you look across across actors, Hollywood celebrities and such, and you kind of there's only a handful of men that are probably just not like doing some, but doing things that if they looked any less, attractive or were any less confident in themselves, would be Me Too'd into the ground.
Right. I would agree. I mean, I think a good example of that is a guy like Elon Musk. So Elon Musk is, I mean, obviously a wealthy individual. I don't necessarily think he's as brilliant as a lot of people kind of give him credit for, but he's definitely an innovator. But he's very blue pilled at the same time, right? I mean, he got fucked up over his girlfriend. Well, he fucked up the launch of the Model 3 because he had a bad whatever. He was trying to impress his girlfriend, and he put out this crazy tweet that Tesla was going to be bought out at $420, 420, the weed number, because his girlfriend was all into pot, and he thought it'd be a funny joke, and he was brought up by the SEC for that. So if he was he would not be in the positions he's in now if he was like not as rich. Oh, I've got a helicopter flying over. Yeah, if his criteria was taken down a notch, I think the fact that he is rich and famous definitely plays into his ability. But other than that, he really doesn't have much game. Like he's doing all the blue pill shit that, it's ridiculous. And again, I think that has a lot to do with especially these young men. We've got a generation of men raised by women. They probably did not have positive masculine role models.
Mm-hmm.
So they never learn to engage. And the clear sign of that is where it talks about most of them are still living with their parents, and they're seeking to engage in things like video games, online streaming, and like basically online entertainment. That's a clear sign of a person who's been raised by a mother, because the mother will try to nurture the child. The father is what pushes the child. And the father is the one that would get the child out of the house, right? It's that kind of. Now, obviously, we don't know the story for everybody. Everybody's unique, but I think that's another factor that plays into it. Lack of fathers in the society.
You could kind of say that about. I mean, yeah, I'm just thinking back on my family, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's pretty much. I was, since I pretty much made it all the way till 21 with my father still around, that was a lot of it, was just being kind of pushed to, when I went to ministry and I went to Dallas when I was 18.
Yeah.
That was pretty much get out. Whereas the track that my mother was kind of putting me on was continue going to school from home.
Yeah.
Granted, I did come back home for a couple of years there after Dallas, but it was just that initial push was very much encouraged by my father.
Correct. And you live on your own now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were almost married. You definitely had drives moving forward that a lot of people in that demographic didn't have. Yeah, correct. So, props to your dad for what he did. And,
but that's what's lacking. That's what's lacking in so many families now is
agreed.
There's no real drive to just, and it's like, no, it's not like, 18 kick you out. It's just like, hey, 18 encouragement, like the slightest bit of encouragement of going out and being on your own. Both my siblings who are now 18 in college. My sister lives on her own. My brother lives in a house full of college roommates.
Cool.
And they're all getting like a real crash course. I communicate them with them a lot, and they're getting a real crash course into real life, which is a good thing. But for a lot of, kids their age, it's not really there. I mean,
I would agree. I know it wasn't there for me, and I definitely suffered as a result of it. Now, I did move out. I moved back in because my mother had, she had issues with drinking. But yeah, I would go, as you know, I would travel. I'd go for stints at a time. I spent some time in the US and elsewhere and stuff like that. But I'd always have to go back home because, as I say, I had to kind of check on my mom and stuff like that. But yeah, I probably would have got that cracking a lot faster if my father played a much bigger role in my life. I took on very much a caregiver role in my family because my parents split. Around that time, my mother had cancer. Then my sister had cancer. I was the only one who could drive, and I was taken into the appointments. And those were the years I was supposed to be in university, right? This is like just out of school and all that other stuff. And yeah, so I got a very late start on things because, straight up, because I did not have that masculine imagery to kind of put forward to me. But yeah, right. I think that's definitely part of it. I think that the feminism, the women's part is definitely an issue. The lack of fathers is definitely an issue. The Me Too movement is definitely an issue, as well as hypergamy gone mad, where, as we say, when I got my first serious girlfriend, I was 16. I was like 15. Maybe I was 15 going into 6, somewhere around there. And it was normal for 15-year-olds to date like other 15, 16-year-olds and that kind of stuff. Right. Like my first serious sexual relationship was until I was about 18. And I was dating somebody who was kind of my contemporary. So that was very normal growing up. But now I know 18-year-olds that have like 40-year-old boyfriends. And that's fine. That's nobody is like batting an eye at this shit, right? It's like, so all of those social restraints, all of those, I guess, for want of a better word, taboos are gone. And like, I could tell you straight up, like most of my, I get a lot of DMs in my Instagram and stuff like that. And it's from very young girls. And it's ridiculous. And they're seeking the attention of these older men. And that was not possible probably in any other generation, probably in the last 5 to 10 years, with the internet, that there was really no way for a young girl to get into the sphere of influence of these older men, without a lot of effort. And all of that's changed now.
You're saying I basically just got to wait it out? Just kidding.
There's always Amsterdam.
Amsterdam, Thailand.
Even London. London has walk-ups.
Yeah.
Not that I know about these things, but they're basically like miniature brothels. So they put a sign outside. It's very famous. Anybody who's interested, you search for London walk-ups or Soho walk-ups, and it's these 1-bedroom brothels with one girl. You go up, you knock on the door, and she's got a price list, like a menu. What do you want? And you pick what you want, and you pay the girl, and you bang it out, and you go for like 20 minutes, and then you move on.
Wow.
perfectly legal.
Really?
Yeah. It's and as I say, you see a sign outside, models. Sometimes it'll tell you the name of the girl working there. Not that I know about these things, but you just walk up and she's like, what, 30 pounds, 40 pounds for a 20-minute session.
Jeez. And you guys are afraid of butter knives.
Yeah, and stepping on Legos. I'm sure that's what today was all about.
Yeah.
But it is an issue, though.
I want to get your opinion though on this, because I don't. Do you think the fact that the 80-20 rule, as we've called it, is further growing to almost like a 90-10 rule? Can that be a problem for society?
I would think it's going to grow. And the reason I think that's going to grow is actually because of Dan Bilzerian and people like him. Now, for anybody who doesn't know, this is like the king of Instagram, and he's kind of normalized the idea of one man being surrounded by like 7 or more women, right?
More than that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, but generally he's basically got his own harem. And I think that is probably the last major stigma that's kind of there, this idea of sharing your women. And Rollo Tomasi actually, he does say, he said that women would much rather share a top alpha man than, stay with like a beta cock, guy who's faithful. Right. And that's where I think what you're talking about, I think as that becomes more normalized in society, you're going to see more and more of these absolute top echelons of men having like multiple girlfriends and all that kind of stuff. And all that means is that for the bottom 80%, 90%, as the case might be, they're flat out of luck.
What happens when you have so many men? More than usual, flat out of luck.
This is the good news if you're from the West. Right. If you're from the West and you have a Western passport, or if you're somewhat fair-skinned, or you got anything like that going on, you will always be of high value in other parts of the world. Right. So right now, I'm not a very tall guy. I'm like 5'6", maybe 5'7" on a good day. Right. So like when I started dating out here, I got nothing. I got like no responses on Tinder, right? Because I was just too short. Like every woman in London, and London has some of the attracts some of the most beautiful women in the world. They all want a 6 foot tall, blonde, blue-eyed Englishman, who's like on his verge of his second knighthood or some shit like that, right? That's what they want. They want literal princes. I ain't got that shit going on, right? But if I go to Thailand, China, Japan, India, even Africa for a certain extent, even the Caribbean, I am in high demand, right? And because my SMV in those locations is much high, because in those locations I'm exotic. So I think the first thing that's going to happen, if people want to find relationships and stuff like that, you've got to think global. If it's not happening where you're at, definitely get out of where you're at. Right. I think that's the first thing. And the second thing is, as you and I would both agree, work on yourself. So I might be short, but I don't need to be short, fat, and broke. Right. Right. I can work on my money. I'm in the gym now. I'm losing weight, and I'm trying to be the best short man that I can be. Right.
Right.
And I'm hoping that my location, I can work something out. So
what I'm getting at though is more so like, granted, yes, there are the guys who seek solutions basically to the problem.
Correct.
But as we know full well, a majority of just people in general don't really seek too many solutions. Like most people tend to follow pretty basic patterns of behavior.
Yes. So most people are not awake to the realities that we're discussing. Most men are not awake to this. They're still plugged in. They still going to work a job and hope that.
So this is why I caution people with what I think could be a problem is the growing problem of men, like we're saying flat out, not getting laid.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say fear. I'm concerned there might become too many men. I mean, you look at the you look at the problems with mass shooters that are raised by single moms. You're seeing this sort of this conflation. Well, I shouldn't say conflation. This, the Elliot Rodger thing. This sort of this incel type of thing. The guys who single mom, really fucked up in the head about their ideas of dating and relationships and women and such. What happens when you have an environment where more of those types of men are the probability of men like that popping out of society and showing up becomes higher.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Do you have a problem now where you have like basically mass gender terrorism? If you want to call it that. I shouldn't say that. That's not the proper phrasing, I think.
Right.
Mass incel terrorist type of things. If you get what I'm saying
I understand what you're saying. And I mean, it is a common thing. I don't know if you saw the Netflix movie Manhunt of the Unabomber, but the Unabomber also apparently was like a 50-year-old virgin. Genius, like 2-something IQ, but he'd never had intimacy with a woman as well. And a lot of people actually credit the sexual revolution as a form of social engineering to try and curtail that violence. They figured if women would sleep around a lot, they would kind of solve the incel problem. What they didn't count on is that the women only wanted to sleep with a certain type of man, right?
And due to the, like I said, the rising bar of the standard of what is the man that I will just give myself to, being higher and higher and higher, you actually get a larger disparity than what is normally accounted for socially. What society has been sort of used to, like I said, for the longest time, there's always been men that just aren't going to reproduce, that aren't going to get laid.
Correct.
But when you make that out to be way more than what society is sort of adjusted for, like I said, I tell people, you're going to have way too many incels out there, and we know what incels have been known to do when they reach a certain point. There's a critical point, I think, where you have a real social problem. And like I said earlier on, it always came back to, well, it's not our job to fuck incels. Well, I'm not saying you have to. I'm not saying you need to. I'm just saying there's a huge problem with too many of them being around.
I would agree. Which is why I'm probably in favor of legalizing prostitution. Because if anybody got to that point of frustration before they even get to the point of violence, they will be desperate to find an avenue. Not everybody could fly to Thailand or the Dominican Republic or Brazil or one of these places. Which is why I think prostitution should be legalized to at least give society a valve. Right.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. There is no valve to it, but now that there are valves coming about, what is it? The sex dolls, I mean, the obviously there's legalizing prostitution would be a huge valve for that. And then what else? I mean,
so there's basically, well, the MGTOWs would say, what is it? It's dolls, dogs, and dudes.
Yeah, buddies, like having friends. So you get your sex from a doll, you get your companionship from having buddies around, dudes.
Yeah.
And you get like sort of that
affection from the dog, or like
some sort of deeper connection. Yeah. Now, we're not saying they're fucking the dogs or fucking the dudes. But that is what I've heard is kind of a MGTOW thing. And it seems, it can serve some of them.
Yeah, and I'll add to that in the sense of men generally, as we get older, our drive, if without proper maintenance, our sex drive will diminish.
Right.
Now we can push back on that technologies to the point now where you could be cranking it out at 80, and God bless Playboy. Hugh Hefner. You know, he definitely showed what was possible, right? So yeah, we can push back on that a little bit, but for the most part, most men are drifting, and you and I both know this. Most men are just drifting through life. They've really not got the drive. They're kind of plugged into the system, and I think for the most part, they're a lost cause. Right? There's always going to be exceptions, which is fine. But at the same time, I think on a larger scale society, yeah, I think the sex dolls are very important. Even the artificial womb, I think, will be a game changer. And yeah, the technology is really going to be the answer to this. Because, for instance, China, as you would know, they're dealing with this situation right now. Because of the one-child policy, there are far more men in China than there are women. Am I correct?
Yeah. Wait, I think it's like there was like a number. It was enough that it was a problem. Was it? So 1 point something billion? I think it was. It hadn't been at least. Was it more than 100 million extra men?
I know it's a very, very huge number, and these are young, like feral, military grade type, military age type men. And there was a huge and I think they were literally importing women from Africa, and there's a huge sex trafficking.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty, and this is it. Like a lot of Chinese men, because they want access to business opportunities in Africa, they're marrying African women, and there's that whole kind of synergy that's going on. So, which is fine. I mean, yeah, by all means. But this is what's going to end up happening. We have to think of this thing globally. And I mean, as you say, there's always going to be a bunch of men that have fallen out of the gene pool. But I think if you're a Western man, you have an advantage. No matter what color, race, creed, whatever. If you're a Western man, you've got an edge. You can always go somewhere in the world and find yourself in a place of high value.
No, I definitely get that. Yeah, I think we're definitely at a critical spot now where traveling has to become a lot cheaper for these men to really get out there. Yeah. Somehow talking about this, again, you and I being libertarians, kind of with some anarchist views, I brought this up to some people, basically asking like, so when you talk to libertarians, do you ever talk about any sort of like a social issue with libertarians?
I've not on this topic.
No, not this specifically, but let's say certain topics where it's or even so I put up a poll on my Twitter, basically asking, do you think humans are more driven by instinct or reason?
Yeah.
85% so far have voted instinct.
Okay.
All of the tweet replies to that tweet, and it was from so many libertarians. Depends upon the individual. Well, it depends upon the individual. Well, it depends upon the individual. Well, you gotta. And I just thought, is it just me, or do libertarians and anarchists have an inability to have a proper conversation about anything regarding groups, trends, or polls?
I see what you're saying. And yeah, I understand the libertarian desire to always bring it back to the individual, and that's great. Good for you. But at the same time, there are overarching trends and stereotypes and markers that you can gauge from a society, right? And it's not to say that, well, of course we're going to be labeled as racist and xenophobic and whatever, ism they want to throw at it. But it's just data. It's just statistics. And we quoted that. Like the last time we discussed the African population, the African American population in the US is what, 15 or 16%, but they're overwhelmingly represented in certain crimes. And
over 50% of all violent crime.
On violent crime. There we go. Right. And that's just quoting the numbers. So for the libertarians to ignore those overarching trends and say, well, it depends on the individual. Yes, it does depend on the individual, because nobody could take that statistic and basically point to any one individual black man and say, oh, well, he's a criminal, right? Or anything. You can't bring any of that down to the individual. But you miss a bigger, a broader aspect of society by not recognizing these trends. And this is the issue that I have with libertarians. And I mean, we both hold the non-aggression principle is very paramount. This is like a cornerstone of voluntarism and libertarianism. But let's get real. Not everybody agrees with that, right? There are people out there that believe that violence is golden, that that is their ultimate expression of their will.
Right.
Right. So to assume that in a society, just make everything legal and everything free and, all these different kinds of things is automatically going to make everybody utopian, I think is naive, because you do have barbarians and monstrous people out there that want to do harm, and they're out there and they don't hold the same values as you. And I mean, that's the whole borders discussion, right?
Yeah. That's basically because I asked some people about that, just like I could, I said social issues, and I said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I didn't want to start going off, men and red pill. No, I just said, I said, it's like if I went up to a group of libertarians and anarchists and I said, hey guys, I think single motherhood is, it's been shown single motherhood is a huge problem in society.
Sure, I agree.
Let's have a conversation about it. Well, it depends upon individual situations and any individual and the individual and any individual. Well, you can't just say all and you. Okay, guess we're not talking about this then, because you guys can't think in groups. You guys can't think, the fear I from what I gauge was the fear is the conversation is always going to go towards, here's how we're going to socially engineer out of this problem. No, I'm not saying that, but they should understand that if you had your minarchist or anarchist society where the people are, the individual is absolutely paramount in how the society runs, individuals would be smart enough to form communities, also voluntary, to have conversations about, hey, there's a problem in this community.
Correct.
There is obviously a direction where people are engaging in behaviors that we are statistically seeing as not beneficial.
Correct.
We've got a whole bunch of men who are on their, Mad Max motorcycles, running through town, impregnating all the women and ditching them. This is causing a huge problem for our town,
Exactly.
Are you going to institute some law for that? No. But you're going to be like, okay, maybe as a community, we're not going to let, we're going to let people know, hey, don't fuck with our women.
or better yet, tell the women to buy guns. But no, you're hitting on the point exactly, that which is why, again, I'm not an anarchist. I think society could function under anarchy in sense of like a completely voluntary. It's possible. But because of human nature, and not everybody adheres to those same principles, I do think there are some things that should be enforced by some kind of governing body. And I know the slippery slope that, you start with limited government and then it grows into big. I get all that.
Well, I've argued that with anarchists, is the inevitable fact that government will always come back.
Yeah. I don't think anybody contests that idea.
You push the Rothbard button today, in 100 years, government again. It's just people are going to organize. So what do? Keep pushing the reset button, or?
Yeah. So I mean, you want constitutional government as limited as possible, and you try to keep it from getting too crazy. But it is exactly what you were talking about. That look, we can't all choose which side of the road to drive on. Right. I can't say, okay, well, today I'm going to drive on the left side of the road and you're driving on the right side of the road, and then we hit each other in the middle of the road. Right. Like there's, no law to say.
What is it? The spontaneous organization that anarchists kind of pedestalize a bit.
But if it's spontaneous, like if it evolves, like if you had a community and they build a road believe me, they'll agree upon which side of the road. Now, it may be different from the next town, but if we hit the Rothbard button today with the roads already established, and we basically say, well, pick whichever side you want, that's not going to work, right? That's just going to fuck shit up.
If we push the Rothbard button, I think most people are still going to drive on the right side of the road.
Yeah, but you'll probably get a few who don't.
Would that be any different than the other day with car accidents?
Well, there'll just be more of them, but
yeah, some that just say fuck it, I'm just going to do this because I can.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that, as you say, there are some things, and on the issue of single motherhood, I think there are social policies that have incentivized, especially in the UK. Like, if you get knocked up in the UK, right, as a woman, well, obviously not as a man, but if you get knocked up in the UK, you get council house, you get an allowance, probably like £1,200 a month. You could get your rent subsidized up to maybe, I don't know, £1,400, depending on your council. Yeah, free ride. And then in 18 years, you pop out another one, it just continues.
By the way, question from the chat. If prostitution was legalized, do you think it should still be stigmatized to preserve the social fabric?
Good question. It depends on the culture. It depends on the social culture. So there are places where it is legalized, such as Germany. And then, well, to a lesser extent, I guess, Thailand. In Germany, it's considered a legitimate profession. In fact, if you get a job offer from a German prostitution like company, if a woman gets a job offer from that and she refuses it, she could actually be cut from her benefits. Like, if she has unemployment benefits and she does not accept that, because it's just seen as a legitimate form of work in Germany.
Here's a thought. So we talked about the valve on society, like basically relieving the pressure of these growing disparities between the men who get laid and the men who don't.
Yeah.
What could happen is, which would be kind of nice, but so we legalize prostitution, and all the men that aren't getting it start to, or at least a majority of them start to pay for it, and they start to realize, hey, it's a lot cheaper to just pay a prostitute than it is to get a girlfriend.
Which is true regardless, but yes.
Right. But I mean, but I'm saying the group starts to see that. The group starts to behave knowing that. So what happens to all the, the quote unquote, the good women? Where have all the good women gone? They start to not be as entitled as, super radical, radical feminism maybe starts to lose a little bit of its flame. Yeah. And then because they start to realize, crap, men will just pay for it. And these women are willing to, these women are willing to pull out for the money. Maybe we should try to be a little more attractive, be a little more, interesting to these men, that they're willing to invest in having a relationship, giving us kids, having a family.
I mean, this is of course the biggest contradiction in feminism. Is that, okay, they push for the sexual revolution, and yeah, women could be as promiscuous as men, and they've basically convinced women that in order to win at the sexual game, you got to be like a man, right? Which defeats the whole purpose. But anyway, besides that, but they're also the biggest enemies to sex workers, which you would think is supposedly the most empowering.
Well, that's the thing, though, is there are feminists who are for sex workers.
Sure. But the mainstream tends to the radical feminists tend to demonize sex workers because they don't really want men to be able to get the sex for money, right?
Yeah.
And to the question about specifically the culture in the U.S., I think in the U.S., if prostitution was legalized, it would be difficult because there is a very religious connotation in the U.S., right? So it's God, guns, and country, or God, country, and guns is kind of the unofficial motto of the U.S.
That's why it's only really legal in Nevada,
right? It's legal in Nevada. Is it legal anywhere else? Alaska?
Alaska.
I'm not sure, but
they probably need it in Alaska.
But again, look at the Nevada culture, and of course, this is Las Vegas, it has its own culture, the culture of sin and, that kind of thing. And in that environment, the Bunny Ranch is a tourist attraction in Nevada. This is where like the old prostitutes go when they're like pushing 50 and 60. They go to the Bunny Ranch. And that's totally acceptable. In fact, I think the person who ran it actually ran for mayor and won, but he died before he could take office.
Wow.
Totally different culture. Totally different culture. So I think in that respect, not to kind of pass the buck, it depends on the state. It depends on kind of the underlying, milieu of that particular state.
So Nevada is the only U.S. state to allow some legal prostitution. 8 counties have active brothels, and then as of February of 2018, there are 21 brothels, but prostitution outside the licensed brothels is illegal in Nevada. So it's like very small, like controlled prostitution, legally, right, at least.
Sure. I get that. I don't think that's ever really been enforced in Nevada, because I've always heard of streetwalkers and all kind of people come up to you in the bars and whatever. But yeah, but again, it's the culture of Nevada, right? It's just like when you go to New York, there's a culture of New York, and it's very hustle and bustle, and gotta make money, and no time for small talk, and a little rude, like fuck you and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's a culture. So it depends on the culture of this. And this is the great thing about the US, is that every state can be a incubator for these issues, right? So we saw like the legalization of marijuana is a great example. Some states have done it. Some states have done it medically, and we're still kind of figuring out what that looks like. But each state is like its individual petri dish of experimentation. And I think it's just a matter of time before DC, the capital of the US, has more prostitutes in it than I think any other state per square mile or whatever it is. It has the highest density of prostitutes in the country, is in Washington, D.C.
What?
That's what I read. I don't know if, of course, I can't even remember where. I think it was Playboy or something like that. some madam wrote a book about how she ran like a high class prostitution ring in D.C.
I mean, it's got to be all those politicians.
Yeah, it's the politicians, it's the power brokers, it's the foreign diplomats that come in. It's no different in New York. If you're doing the Wall Street thing, if you're doing the M&A, mergers, acquisitions, banking deals, you take the guys out to a strip club and you're trying to close a deal. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. They've got their prostitutes and everything else. That's just how you sell it.
Wolf of Wall Street was not entirely inaccurate.
Or even The Aviator. Ironically, both of them with Leonardo DiCaprio. He was trying to sell his famously known as the Spruce Goose. It was actually I can't remember, the Goliath or whatever, his big airplane for the army. And what did he do? He got a bunch of strippers in to schmooze the generals. That's just how it's done, right? Oh, I like a human question. Where else are the House Democrats going to go if they want to get sex, right? So they've got to go to pros. Yes,
I'm just thinking. I'm just imagining like them, like what the like are politicians, like these real establishment, like politicians that have all the talking points. Are they really like that in real life? Are they real, like if they're alone with a prostitute or something, or a stripper, what are they really talking about? I mean, is Bernie Sanders getting a lap dance and the 1%,
I'm going to give you free college.
Are you going to vote for me? I'll give you free college for life if you give me a little something extra.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, politicians are basically actors, and yeah, it's even they need a release, because none of that shit is real, right? The AOCs and even Donald Trump and stuff, it's all a show. It's all pomp and circumstance to try and win votes.
Oh my gosh. Do you think AOC hired a male stripper to celebrate her win?
I'm sure that would be an interesting scandal.
I mean, you've actually heard about that then. This article that came out, it was like the truth behind male strippers.
No, I don't think I heard.
Hen parties, so like bachelorette parties.
Right. I think okay, yeah.
Yeah, our friend Rich Cooper of Entrepreneurs in Cars posted the article. Basically, it was they did some like interviews with real male strippers to do these like bachelorette parties, and um, some of them appalled, and even sometimes they would actually be pressured into. So they do these bachelorette parties. Women are going to get married like tomorrow, or whatever, like pretty darn soon. And how many times while the men were stripping, like the women, like the friends, or sometimes even the bride to be herself, would force the man to fuck her one last time, or let her give him a blowjob or something. And they were actually absolutely just surprised how often it happened.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. And it was just like this eye-opening thing for a lot of guys, like, oh, like, so just remember when you have that wife that you're about to have and she wants to get a male stripper, or be on the lookout kind of thing.
I mean, I've heard some horror stories of that. I mean, it's not even better at the wedding. I've heard of best men banging out the bride in the reception, right? So even the day after, they're not particularly safe. But on that note, because I don't want to end that on a downer, it really does come down to vetting the woman correctly. And that book, The Tactical Guide to Women,
Mm-hmm.
if you're considering this route, I would recommend anybody to read it. I'm probably going to go through it a third time. Yeah, it's definitely, it's important to look out for those signs. And I mean, I've had my issues with girls that I've dated. Some of them were great, some of them were crazy. And you need to know your red flags and not ignore your red flags. And for us, Red Pill Aware, we're ahead of the game in that respect. But as you and I both know, there are some men out there who are drifting, and the magical hypnotic powers of pussy tend to make most men pretty fucking stupid when it comes to basically their life choices.
Anytime I've heard stories about guys like, well, even people that I know, and there's still that lingering thing behind my mind. Like, I just, like guys that just say, yeah, I don't know, man. Like, we have sex, and, she lets me do all that, but she's on birth control. I'm like, oh,
You say so.
Still wrap it, man. Just
be safe. I mean,
yeah.
unless she's got the coil and you were there watching them insert the coil, because she can't pull that out by herself. Yeah, but it's pretty. Guys, just be very careful out there. There are a lot more crazy.
That was like one of the weirdest things I thought at first when you kept telling me, like, if you're ever with a woman, always wear a condom. I was like, wait, even when you're married? Even when you're married, what? It sounded so weird, and then I thought about it more, like, oh yeah,
it could be an issue.
Granted, you vet the absolute hell out of a woman to make sure, like, what's there. But there's still that little bit.
No, I get it. And I mean, as I say, in the sexual encounters that I've had, I'm not a big fan of condoms. Condoms, like, they irritate me. So I haven't been the best at upholding that rule 100%. But I've made sure the few times I've violated the rule, I've made sure that shit was taken care of. Right. So even if I'd watch her take the morning after pill or whatever, like that's not sorted until I'm pretty much sure that, we've avoided any issues.
And you're calling her days after.
Well, sometimes I never see her again, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah. Good stuff, man.
Yeah, I didn't expect it to go in that direction.
Well, happens. But anything else you wanted to add before we wrap it up here? Wrap it
No.
up.
Always iron rules of Tomasi, guys. Read the Rational Mail. No, I think it's a good topic. I think I feel sorry for the young men who are coming up today. Like honestly, the feminization, the gynotopia, the female imperative is more empowered now than ever before, and it's hitting young men, even men that I would not have thought was susceptible to this shit. I'm seeing it, right? And I've told you some stories of being on the underground in London, and I saw an Asian man who I would have never thought for this kind of stuff, dressed in a skirt with stockings and heels. He was covered up with a trench coat, and I was just like, "What the hell is going on?" I don't know if that was a prank or what. Maybe I totally misjudged the situation, but I don't normally see Asians fall in for this kind of thing. You guys tend to kind of have your heads on, right?
One would hope.
Yeah, this culture hasn't picked up in Asia. Thank God for Asia. That's all I could say.
Yeah. I mean, that's my concern now is the Western culture sort of slipping into, especially places like Taiwan. I think I've told you about this, how so the generations, pretty much all the, like, my parents and their parents' generation in Taiwan um had some is very much uh pretty, anti-communist. And now the generation that is mine and after are starting to sort of relax in those sentiments, those attitudes that have been sort of impressed upon them to, like, hey, just remember why this country is a thing.
Mhm.
Granted, yes, we lost the Chinese Civil War and, had to come here to establish this new country, but we're still not giving into the communists. And now the the Nationalist Party, which initially ran to Taiwan, is now having sentiments to sort of try to resolve things with China in a more, like, some sort of coexisting type of attitude that's verging on, like, saying China's cool. It's like, no, China's not cool.
Right.
I mean, freaking concentration camps and it's mass censorship. It's surprising how much stuff they're still doing, although a lot of their restrictions in certain regions have been, lifted a bit to allow for a little bit of capitalism, a little bit of free markets.
Right.
Still pretty messed up in the rest of the country. But that's my concern, is the Western culture, the Western sort of PC culture, with a hint of, basically what, as Jordan Peterson calls it, sort of neo-Marxist postmodernism,
Yes.
kind of seeping a little bit into Taiwan's culture to kind of relax those attitudes that are necessary to kind of keep Taiwan from basically giving into China.
Right. Right.
But
I think the holdout will be Japan. I think if there's one society that's really pushed out against this stuff, it's Japan.
well, yeah, they're, like I've told you, they've started to bolster their military to kind of um be separate from us. Like,
Yeah.
we've been there for the longest time, like making sure they're taken care of. Now they're like, all right, we're cool. Let's take care of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the case. And it's I mean, I've never been there, but I've heard really good things about Japan, and they have not adopted a lot of this kind of the Western thinking, some of the self-destructive thinking. I don't know if there is such a thing as Asian guilt, but yeah, Japan is going to be the star of if their economics survive, because they're on QE 26 or something like that, quantitative easing 26, and their economics are not great, but we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, yeah. So, anyways, thanks everyone for joining us. Um, Definitely check out our previous streams, previous episodes. Subscribe to us on iTunes and other podcasting platforms that we're on. think iTunes is the main one. Also, like, comment, and subscribe to the channel here, as well as Brook's channel. Follow both of us on social media. I'm at Amos Joe. Brook is at Brook_Potter on Twitter. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. This is our 46th episode. We will hopefully see you guys. Well, actually, when we see you guys.
Hopefully you're out on a job and you actually can't make it to the show next week. But
yeah,
we'll keep people posted as always.
Yep. Thanks for watching, guys.
Thanks again, Wise.